Absence, we are pleased to bring you the Weather Studio live, broadcasting live from the Met Office HQ in Exeter. It has been a long absence, but hopefully what they say about absence making the heart grow stronger is true. Now, we've tried to reproduce the Weather Studio live as much as possible compared to how we used to do things, but you'll notice a subtle change here in the studio. I'm standing on my own. Normally I'd have a friend and colleague with me. But sadly, we can't be together at this time. But I'm not really alone because Alex joins us from his home.
My heart has definitely grown stronger and fonder, Aidan, in our absence. But yes, we are back and we are very, very excited to be back. It is good to be back. It's not quite the same, but we've got a new structure to everything. And do let us know what you think. As always, we want your questions. It's been 266 days since the last Weather Studio live. Over 1,000 model runs, Lord knows how many ensembles. I've had a son since we were last on air. And I'm in my spare room at the moment, so anything could happen. He could wake up and start screaming, so it's worth staying tuned just to see if that happens. But coming up in the show, obviously we'll be talking UK weather. Is this cold weather going to last? But we're also bringing the return of 3-Minute Met, looking at white Christmases. So plenty to get through, and we do want your questions, don't we, Aidan?
Yeah, it's great to be back, and one of the best things about the Weather Studio Live is answering those questions live. You never know what kinds of questions will come through week to week, and so it would be great to hear your thoughts. And first up, before we get onto the questions, let's just take a look at some amazing weather from not only the UK, but from around the world. Recent amazing weather. And of course, we've had some wintry weather, so we'll take a look at that now. Some people love the cold weather in the winter, some people hate it, but there's no denying it can be really quite beautiful. And during the last couple of days, it's been fog across parts of the UK, especially East Anglia, some dense fog. In fact, in some places, it's still foggy for, I don't know, the second or third day on a trot. And this was taken to the Fens by Dave Bradley. Beautiful foggy scene yesterday. And another one there from Dave Bradley with frost and fog combination yesterday, because yesterday actually was the coldest day in the UK since the 1st of March 2018, and by that we mean the top temperature that was reached yesterday was lower than any other day going back a couple of years. I think it was minus 0.7 degrees in Santon Downham, Norfolk-Suffolk border. So, and just looking at the observations at the moment, a couple of places in East Anglia are still below freezing or at around freezing, Bury St Edmunds and Houghton Hall. So, yeah, it's still cold, it's still foggy in places, but for most, it's now turning a little bit milder. One lucky Liam Kenwood spotted a fog bow in Maidstone yesterday. I've never spotted one, but you have to agree it's a beautiful sight, and they're caused by the tiny water droplets that are in fog and the sun shining through them. So they form just like rainbows, but instead of raindrops falling through the sky, it's the sun being refracted from fog drops. And the difference is that fog drops are a little bit smaller than raindrops, and so there's less colours, or fewer colours in the fog bow. It's more of a hazy white colour, but you can see that bow structure. Very, very nice indeed. And wintry scenes last week. On Friday, of course, snow fell across large parts of the country, particularly the higher ground, but not exclusively. These pictures were taken in the North Yorkshire Dales. Lovely wintry scenes there. This guy looking a bit sheepish. Beautiful. The deepest snow, of course, was the higher ground of the UK, and this was in North Wales, the higher parts of North Wales. And you can see the sort of drifts of snow there. And this, we put this on the Met Office Twitter feed and asked people if they could tell which way the wind is blowing. See if you can tell which way the wind is blowing from that picture. Because you can see the snow sort of sticking out like that, can't you? But actually, if you're not aware of this, it's somewhat counterintuitive, because it's not as if, you know, the wind is blowing the snow away like that. What actually happens is the ice crystals or snowflakes get blown in by the wind and accumulate towards the wind. So the wind is actually coming in from that direction. That's how that works. So it's counterintuitive. It looks like the wind should be blowing the other way. And another rare treat thunder snow.
Yes, we had thunder snow early hours of Friday morning last week in Edinburgh, close to Edinburgh. This is a pretty rare phenomenon. Have you ever seen that, Aidan? Because I have once. I was in London a few years ago, and it is amazing. There's nothing unusual about it, really, in terms of what it is. It's just a thunderstorm when it's cold. So instead of rain falling out of the sky, you're getting snow. But what it does, it changes the snow that's falling, or particularly lying on the ground, if you're lucky enough to have that as well. It changes the way that thunder sound. So it sounds different, and the lightning is intensified by the snow falling and the snow lying on the ground. It just seems brighter as well. So it's a slightly different phenomenon. And actually, police in Edinburgh had to put out a tweet last Friday morning, telling people not to worry because they'd had so many people thinking it was an explosion or something like that. It was very loud and very atmospheric, but it is reasonably rare. I have experienced it once. Have you ever experienced thunder snow, Ed?
No, I have actually. I have once, yeah, on in an RAF base when I was doing the forecast there. It was snowing, and there's a distant sound of rumble, or rumble sound. It probably wasn't that distant. It just sounds more distant with the snow on the ground. Something else everyone was talking about this year. The hurricane season, or the tropical storm season in the North Atlantic, which is summed up by this graphic, really. These are all the named storms in the North Atlantic. It has been a truly remarkable season.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. I mean, that picture is just beautiful, but also quite scary at the same time. Just incredible numbers coming out from this season. Now, kind of nominally, the season is over because it runs from the 1st of June to the 30th of November. But that is just a nominal season, really. That's when they're most likely to occur, tropical storms in the Atlantic basin. But they can occur throughout the year. And if one occurs this month, it will still continue from this season's names, which have just been record-breaking on a number of levels, all kinds of records broken, 30 named storms. That's the most in any season. The second time only we've got to the Greek alphabet because we ran out of letters in our own alphabet. 27 of those storms were the earliest on record for that particular letter. And there was 13 hurricanes, 6 major hurricanes as well. 12 storms made landfall in the US. That was a record as well, beating the previous record of 9. And there were major hurricanes in November for the first time. So the season just kept on coming. Got down to Iota. Didn't quite get to Kappa yet. But, you know, as I say, there's still 3 weeks left. It's the 5th year in a row we've had more than average the number of storms, 5th year in a row had at least one Category 5 storm, and the 6th year in a row. We had an early start, so the first storm was actually before the official start on the 1st of June, but all kinds of other records were broken as well, eh?
Yeah, incredible. And speaking of breaking records, it was the warmest November for the world since records began. This is a temperature anomaly map, and actually the biggest temperature anomaly, so the darkest reds, where it was much warmer than average, Siberia, northern parts of Alaska there, and across the Arctic, where it was really much warmer than average. And across the world, the temperature anomaly from average was plus 0.8 degrees. And for Europe, it was the joint second warmest November on record. And we had also a mild November ourselves, didn't we?
Yeah, it was very mild and also quite dry. Temperature-wise, the 6th warmest November on record across the UK, and records going back to 1884, 127 years. It was the 6th warmest, and it was quite dry, particularly in certain areas across the east. Parts of Lincolnshire and Yorkshire had between 20 and 30% of their average November rainfall, and in Tyne and Wear, it was the driest November going back for 60 years. So yeah, a remarkable one, following on from what was a very wet October as well. So it was quite an interesting autumn all in all.
Yeah, and you can just see the maps there. So much of the UK red, above average temperatures, and then large parts were drier than average, just a bit wetter there for Western Scotland. Now it's time to look at a new feature that we have. Well, we've done it once before, but it's called 3 Minute Met, and essentially it does what it says on the tin. We set ourselves the challenge to explain a meteorological topic in under 3 minutes. There'll be a clock on the screen, so there's that added excitement whilst we're explaining a meteorological topic. Well, let's have a go. Welcome to 3 Minute Met, and this time we're going to be talking about white Christmases. Everything you need to know about white Christmases. Let's take it away. 3 2, 1. Let's start with the definition. What is a white Christmas? Well, officially, for a white Christmas to be defined, all you need is one snowflake to be spotted in a particular location during the 24 hours of Christmas Day. And that might be Buckingham Palace, or it might be other parts of the UK, depending on where you fancy placing a bet.
Let's take a look at some stats, shall we? Because over the last 60 years, 80% of Christmases have been white across the UK, but that just is one flake in one location, as Aidan has just said. If you narrow it down to an individual place, then, those statistics really drop down. So take Edinburgh and Belfast, only 18% of the last 60 years have been white. London, that percentage drops further, only 10%. And get this, in London, there hasn't been a white Christmas this millennia. It hasn't happened since 1999. The percentages dropped further for Cardiff, 7%. There hasn't been a white Christmas, any snow falling across the UK recorded for the past 2 years running. And that's only happened once in the past 60 years. And get this, it's never happened 3 years in a row. So what does that say about this year? The last time it was officially there for a white Christmas in 2017, when around 11% of our observing sites recorded snow. But the last time there was snow lying on the ground was back in 2010, when 83% of our observing stations recorded snow lying on the ground. I remember it well, Aidan.
Yeah, that's right. You might think that white Christmases are becoming less common, but actually they used to be more frequent during a time known as the Little Ice Age. The River Thames froze over once every 10 years or so. White Christmases were more common, but there was another reason they were more common, because in 1752 the calendar changed. Well, that brought Christmas Day earlier in the season, which made it less likely for it to snow.
OK, let's take a look at the chances for this year. Is it going to be a white Christmas this year? Well, the short answer is it is simply too early to tell. Anyone tells you it's definitely going to be a white Christmas this year, they're talking nonsense. It's too early to tell. A timeline for the next few weeks. How about this? Next Wednesday, we'll be doing the 10-day trend, and that will look at, the trends temperature-wise in and around the Christmas period for sure. And then towards the end of next week, as we get towards the 19th, 20th, then we'll have an idea of what the pressure patterns might look like. Because, of course, it doesn't need to just be cold, but you also need moisture for snow. So you need that combination. Then around the 20th, 21st, we should have a decent idea of what we're expecting on the big day itself. And we might then, if it's going to be cold enough, we might then have an idea of areas that could have a white Christmas. But the detailed snow forecast, you're really only looking at a 48-hour lead time. So it's just too early to tell. So the main message at the moment, stay tuned, stay updated. As I said, anyone or anything you read on the internet that says it's definitely going to be, don't believe it for a second. Speaking of seconds, how did we do?
Bang on, 3 minutes.
Boom.
3 minutes. Yeah, we did it. Triumphant. We could chalk that up as a score. We'll have to keep a scoreboard of these. Right, if you enjoyed that, if you enjoyed the information there, you can learn about white Christmases in this book, Very British Weather, amongst many other meteorological facts and tantalising trivia. I can thoroughly recommend Very British Weather, partly, of course, because I helped contribute towards it, but I wasn't the only one. Many colleagues here at the Met Office had some very important contributions, much more important than my contributions. And it's all about British weather. It is divided up into... That wasn't what you
said in rehearsal. In rehearsal, you wrote that from cover to cover.
I was giving myself a confidence boost ahead of the live. You've got to boost your ego so that you're
Let's name some people who are Bonnie Diamond, Ollie
Claydon helped with the contributions, and Met Office archivists Catherine and Mark also helped with the archive bit. There's a lot of historical stuff in there, loads of really interesting historical stuff. Mark McCarthy helped with the weather and climate facts, and Dan Suri, as well as Frank Barrow and Jodie Ramsdale, they all help with the science. So lots of people to thank. Too many. Well, we thank them all at the end. So get the book and you can see who we're thanking in the book.
Are you doing a signing? Are you doing some signing?
I have already done some signings. Yeah. But it's difficult these days, isn't it? And I've only done them because people actually asked me, not because I said I wrote the book. It was a big team effort.
Yeah.
I'll sign your copy afterwards if you want, and we'll
thanks, mate.
Find some way of getting it to you. Right. Anyway, we've had some questions through.
We have had lots of questions coming through. Do keep them coming in. Steph Gibson on YouTube. Is there an increased chance of snow for the Midlands? We always seem to miss out. It goes above or below or around us. We have so many of these people saying it always misses us. We never get it. We never get it. It's just quite rare in this country, particularly across England and Wales, to get much snow anymore in the winter months. So yes, you've got more chance if you live up a hill, but there's no certain areas that just seem to miss it or seem to know. We always get that. People just have a kind of a complex because they love it so much and they want it. No sign of any snow, though, in the forecast across the Midlands at this stage. Sorry.
Yeah, and James Young on YouTube asked about interesting model output suggesting a potential sudden stratospheric warming may occur next month. What are your thoughts? Now, I'll be covering the longer range forecast in just a mo, and I'll briefly explain for those who aren't aware what this means, a sudden stratospheric warming. But for a longer explanation, you can head to the Met Office YouTube page, learn about weather, and just Google sudden stratospheric warming if you want a longer explanation of what it is. But I'll briefly cover it in the long-range forecast bit in just a mo. And equally, for Jonathan Winton on YouTube, he's asked if any of this cold air in the east is going to make any ground in our direction from the end of next week. And that's the multi-million-pound question because, it is, as I'll explain now, it's a battleground. When you're talking about winter, you often talk about these battlegrounds, and I'll explain everything now in the UK forecast. But before we get onto that, I've just animated the satellite and radar image from the last 24 hours or so. Apologies for those in Scotland who now have to relive the very wet weather that you've seen in the last 24 hours. As you can see this rain spiralling around an area of low pressure actually, and in fact if I put the isobars on you can actually see that area of low pressure. That low pressure, kind of, and the weather fronts associated with it, were kind of sort of responsible for the snow at the end of last week. Not really, because it's all become very mixed since then. But the cold front that came down from the northwest last week that brought some snow, that then ended up heading into the Mediterranean and picked up a lot of moisture mixed with some warmer air. Then it pushed north again into the colder North Sea. So it's a mixture of all sorts of different weather types and it's all become quite messy. So it's not as cold as it was at the end of last week, but it does contain some additional rain and hill snow for Scotland. Now that at the moment is sinking its way south and it's bringing showers effectively to northern and western Britain over the next 24 hours. So if we take a look at the current picture across the UK, this is the time of recording right now, and you can see that low pressure. But as I was mentioning, some places still have fog. It's not quite showing up on the weather graphics here, but there are still some fog patches across East Anglia. It's still cold here, so this type of weather that we've had over the last few days, the foggy, the wintry, the frosty, cold weather, it's still there, but a change is taking place elsewhere. And I'll show you what's going on if I just zoom out. And I mentioned a battleground just a moment ago. And we often have this in the winter. You have high pressure building up over parts of Europe into Russia. The reason you get high pressure, actually, if I zoom out further, you'll see the predicted snow depth there on the map, just faintly. You have a lot of cold air across Siberia, and with that cold air, it becomes quite dense, you get high pressure. Meanwhile, the Atlantic is relatively mild by comparison. That's where areas of low pressure develop, and they are picked up by the jet stream and sent our way. Now, what we've got at the moment is a battleground between that high pressure and the low pressure to the west. And we've had some influence from that high pressure to the east because of the cold and generally benign, foggy sort of weather that we've seen primarily in eastern England recently. So what does that mean? Well, it's all about to change, but it's going to change slowly. Just to show you on here, what we're going to see... Oh! Trigger happy. What we're going to see is, you can tell it's been a while since I had to play with these buttons. What we're going to see is the jet stream, it's going to try and pull these areas of low pressure into the UK and beyond, and these weather fronts. So I'm just playing it through there. These weather fronts are trying to come in, but As they're running against this area of high pressure, let's pause it there. Thursday's a great example, actually. As they run up against the high pressure, they slow down and you end up with a logjam over the UK. These weather fronts come in and they just sit there. So what all that means, basically, for the weather over the next few days is that it's very slowly going to turn cloudier, wetter, and milder as these weather fronts move in. But it's slow progress because they're going to come in and they're just going to start squeezing up against this blocking area of high pressure over Eastern Europe. This is cold air to the east of us. This is mild air, classic battleground. What does that mean for our weather? Let's just skip back to today. And we've still got some fog there across East Anglia, and in fact, it's expected to thicken overnight, so a fog warning in force for East Anglia in the southeast. But meanwhile, elsewhere across the UK, we've got showery rain coming through, and by the, second half of the night, that rain will help to clear the fog, and so visibilities will improve. But this is how it looks by lunchtime tomorrow. We've got showers remaining across Scotland, eastern parts of England. A sunny start to the day for Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest, but by lunchtime, cloud thickens, outbreaks of rain begin to move in, and this slice of sunshine, just a tiny little ridge of high pressure moving across the country, will mean that it brightens up eventually in the east, and the rain clears and it's a sunny end to the afternoon. Further west, rain starts to move in. Now, what happens over the next few days is that those weather fronts, they're queuing up, they're wanting to come in with their outbreaks of rain, but as I mentioned, moving that forward, by the time we get to Thursday, they're going to start slowing down. They're coming up against that area of high pressure. They're slowing down. Some heavy rain there across Wales and the southwest later Wednesday. But as these weather fronts, effectively become stationary across the UK, they fizzle out. So I think Thursday looks like a generally cloudy and damp day in many places, low cloud, hill fog, bits and pieces of rain and drizzle, but the rain is tending to fizzle. It will be damp over hills primarily around coasts, but plenty of dry weather in between. It will still feel cold, particularly in the east, but changes are occurring over the next few days, and just running that forward, and you can see a more active weather front coming along for Friday. So more rain to come. This time it doesn't fizzle as much. The wind picks up, and that rain's going to start accumulating, especially over Western Hills, especially over parts of Scotland by the end of the week. So change is coming for the next few days, but it's going to make a slow progress across the UK, that's for sure.
Excellent stuff, Aidan. Really interesting. We've got some more questions coming in. Please do keep questions coming. Give us your feedback as well. What do you think about this the new show, the new format, the way it's looking? Do keep your feedback coming in as well. Tell your friends that we're back as well. Make sure they're tuning in, whether they're watching it live or afterwards. George Birmingham on Facebook says, where can I get a copy of that lovely book? I think we've covered that, George. Maybe a tongue-in-cheek question, perhaps, but all good bookshops. And some bad ones. Jules Smith on Facebook says, why does the coldest time of year also happen to be at the darkest time of year? Well, that's because it's the sun that warms things up. We need the sun. But actually, it's not strictly true, because the colder months are after the new year. So January, February, generally colder than December. But if you're not a big fan of the doom and gloom and the early nights, then think about this. The solstice is only a couple of weeks away, less than a couple of weeks away. There's only one more Monday before the days start getting longer. So that's good news if you don't like the doom and the gloom. The days will suddenly start to get longer. In fact, the evenings will start to get later as early as next week, because the solstice isn't far away.
As the days go longer, the cold grows stronger. That's what they say, isn't it?
I've not heard that one before. No, yes, it's a good one. That's a good, no.
Yeah.
No.
You can use that.
Thanks, mate.
Right, let's take a quick look at the long-range forecast. A lot of people talking about the longer term. I'm not going to go into too much detail for this weekend. Suffice to say, it's going to be increasingly unsettled. There'll be more and more rain in the forecast, or showers. Of course, in between those outbreaks of rain and showers, there will be some drier and brighter interludes. But in general, this is the time recording, and if I just tap on the weekend, watch the location of these areas of low pressure. There's that blocking high I was talking about, so this battleground between high pressure to the east and low pressure coming in from the Atlantic. So if we switch from today to the weekend, and you'll see that high pressure is edging away. So from today to the weekend, that high pressure is being nibbled away, it's being pushed. I mean, it's like as if an unstoppable force is coming up against an immovable object. That's the immovable object, by the way, and that's the unstoppable force. They're both real beasts when it comes to our weather, and we're often on this battleground. But it looks like the jet stream will win through the weekend, and that means that, well, essentially we're going to see more of these weather fronts move through. They'll push through, and they'll bring a mixture of outbreaks of rain and showers through Saturday and Sunday. But at the same time, the winds will become more westerly or southwesterly. So recently they've been coming a bit more from the continent, or they've been quite light actually. And that means this weekend it is going to turn milder. But it is slow progress because this is going to be reluctant to give way to the jet stream. Now, what about the longer term outlook? And I just want to quickly highlight again that high pressure to the east and that low to the west. So the big question is it going to be the case that once this low arrives, it will be low after low after low, weather front after weather front after weather front, or will this high pressure return from the east? Now, recent computer model runs have suggested, on balance, that we're more likely towards the end of next week to see some more influence from this high pressure. But if I just show you this graphic here, you might be familiar with this if you watch the 10-day trend. We sometimes use it. It's the probability of high pressure, which is the red colours, or low pressure in our forecast. And this comes from running the computer model many, many times. This is the European computer model, ECMWF. And these are the predictions for each day. So the days are going out there, 22nd December on the end there. And it shows on the latest model run, very strong chance of these blues, very strong low pressure, and that's what we're seeing. Low pressure is going to take over, and we're going to see that changeable kind of weather coming in from the Atlantic and milder conditions. And that takes us right up to around the middle of next week. And that signal has been consistent with all the previous model runs. That gives you high confidence it's actually going to happen. But if you look a bit further ahead, so 16th, 17th, you get a few more of these reds, which indicates a higher chance of higher pressure around the 16th or 17th. But one thing I have to say is that it's turned a bit more blue on the most recent computer model run, and they're not that strong in terms of how red they are, so confidence isn't that high for high pressure returning. It will come down to whether the high to the east of us exerts a bit more influence and returns, and we'll get a bit more of what you call a blocking situation. And that could mean anything leading up to Christmas. It could mean a bit more of an easterly wind, which would bring colder conditions, or it could mean that we just get more settled weather for a time and sort of dreary, cloudy skies. It could mean various things, but when you get high pressure at winter, it tends to mean less mild and less wet and windy. When you get low pressure, more wet and windy and more changeable. So that's the signal, is that low pressure certainly for the next week or so, very changeable, milder, but then towards the end of next week, perhaps a change back to high pressure, but certainly one to watch, and I'll be covering that in a bit more detail in the 10-day trend tomorrow. Just quickly, I said I'd cover sudden stratospheric warming, and you can find a full explanation on the Met Office YouTube channel, but it's something that weather forecasters often look at this time of year to see if there's any cold weather on the horizon in a few weeks' time, because what you have is a strong circulation surrounding the North Pole. It's stronger than normal at the moment. That's what's called the stratospheric polar vortex. It's even higher than the jet stream, 80,000 feet or whatever, above the North Pole. It keeps the cold air locked in place above the North Pole. Sometimes it can disrupt. That's something we call sudden stratospheric warming. If it disrupts, then the chances of seeing cold weather in the UK increase. They're not nailed on, but they increase. Now, there's some indications from the models, I understand, that stratospheric polar vortex, that wind circulation, is expected to weaken later this month, but no strong signals for a sudden stratospheric warming just yet. But if it happens, we will, of course, let you know. So that's that.
Fascinating stuff, Aidan. Thank you very much for that. That's all good. As you said, more in the 10-day trend tomorrow, so make sure you're keeping up with that. And then again, next week's 10-day trend will be the first kind of indications about anything around Christmas. Catherine Moore, Jamie Cross asked first on Facebook, does having a hot summer mean a cold winter? There's no real correlation between that, Jamie. We've seen hot summers followed by very cold winters and hot summers followed by mild winters. There's no definite correlation between that at all. Catherine Moore on Facebook, do you do a live broadcast every week? Well, Catherine, we used to. Pre-lockdown, we used to do the Weather Studio live every week. This is the first one we've done back since March the 17th, 266 days ago. The plan at the moment is to do them once a month. Just because of resourcing and that kind of thing. So we'll do one once a month. We'll do the next one either the first or second Tuesday in January. But once a month is when we're planning on doing it. And then we'll see how it goes next year. And Connor Harper on YouTube, is it true statistically that Easter is more likely to have snow than Christmas? Well, kind of true, Connor. It depends when Easter falls, because Easter's a movable feast. So it's more likely to snow in March than it is in December. So if Easter's in March, then statistically, yes, probably. But when Easter's in April, which is more often than not, then that's not necessarily true. But it does go to show that snow is almost as likely at the end of March, early April, as it is at the end of December. And it is one of the reasons that Aidan mentioned earlier in the 3-Minute Met, that shift in calendar, even though it only meant 12 days earlier, did actually impact the number of white Christmases that we see across the UK. Aidan.
Yeah, speaking of snowfall, you may have seen some news reports yesterday about chances of snow in the future in the UK or in your part of the UK. And you might have watched the BBC's Panorama programme last night, in which Met Office experts and climate scientists worked with the BBC to look at climate projections for the UK and to see how much warmer and or wetter parts of the UK will be depending on different levels of global warming, so 2 degrees or 4 degrees, for example. Now, you can actually find out for yourself if you want to find out what the climate change will mean for you in your location. You can head to the BBC's climate change visualization tool. To get here, I just Googled BBC climate change visualization tool, and that brought me to this page. And what I've done is I've put in here the Met Office postcode. So to find out how climate change will impact the Met Office location in Exeter in different scenarios for warming. So if the globe warms by 2 degrees and if the globe warms by 4 degrees, and then you can scroll down and it's got some fascinating, this is 2 degrees, this is current, this is 2 degrees, and this is 4 degrees for the average maximum temperature each summer. So you can see there the current average maximum temperature in Exeter, 30 degrees, 2 degrees warming, that would go up to 32 degrees, 4 degrees warming, 37.8 Celsius, which would be quite remarkable for Exeter. I mean, I can't imagine the temperature, you get that temperature in London on the odd occasion, but so have a look at that if you're interested to see what climate change means for your location. And there's heaps of stuff there: summer, winter, rain, sun, snow, freezing days, and of course heat.
Yeah, that's a really good tool, actually. And if you missed that program, it was on Panorama yesterday, but it's still on the iPlayer, so you can catch up on that. Friend of the show, Dr. Mark McCarthy, was on it as well, and so was Lizzie Kendon as well. So there was the Met Office scientists were on that show as well. So yeah, if you can, go back and catch that show, that Panorama from last night on the iPlayer. Right, time for a few more questions just before we go. Rob Marshall on Facebook: has it been a less windy autumn? I didn't check the wind stats for autumn. I guess we haven't had that many named storms, but then we didn't have that many named storms at this stage last year either. But that's a good question. I'll look into that and maybe come back with an answer next time. And if you're not watching this live, then do keep sending your questions in. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, you can ping us a question and we'll pick it up and we'll maybe answer it in the next show, which will, as I say, be in the new year. But that's pretty much it. Just wanted to do a few thank yous though before we go, because It's easy for me and him just to stand around chatting, but a lot of people working very hard behind the scenes to make this happen. I know it just looks like a Skype call, and why couldn't we do it all the way through lockdown? But actually, it's much, much bigger than that. I have to be able to see Aidan, see the graphics and hear him and stuff like that. So it's technically very involved. And remember, we are just a Met Office, not a huge TV company. So I really want to thank Steve Fallon, because he's the studio manager. He's made this happen. It worked very hard to do that. Simon Hammett has been directing today, and he's helped Steve out as well. Emma Lawrence, who's a designer, and she designed the new Wizzy graphics, which I think are brilliant. And again, feedback on the show is more than welcome. Mark Machin made those graphics as well, so big thanks to him. Emma's also been on the questions, so again, thanks to her. The rest of the content team making all the graphics, and big thanks to the bosses as well, Sarah Feisch and Dave Britton, for being really positive about getting this back on air. But that's about it from me, so I wish you a Merry Christmas. Hand you back to Aidan.
Yeah, Emma Lawrence, very talented new member of the team. She, a couple of months ago, asked us to send in funny pictures of our faces for a little experiment that she was doing, and said, oh, don't worry, we won't use them for anything. But you might have spotted them on the advert for the live. So, but it all looks really good. Excellent work. But yeah, thank you for watching. Follow us on social media to keep up to date, but we'll be back in early 2021. But for now, that's it. Bye-bye.